Hello from Gairloch, it's Karen Buchanan here again, the curator of Gairloch Museum. I've come back up to the site of our archaeological dig on Achtercairn Hill, just behind the museum, which you can see in the background there. This is the third and final day of our dig on the Roundhouse, just behind the museum, and I've come up to get a sort of roundup on the findings of the last 3 days. So I've got a few questions for Dr. Tom Gardner, who is the archaeologist in charge of the dig. And I'm just going to move a little bit, Tom, because the sun's behind you, and I'm going to get my arm as close to you as I can so we can hear you.
Catch my good side.
Yeah. Could you give us an update just on what the findings have been over the last couple of days?
Yeah, of course. So we're in our last day, as you've said, and so we're trying to round up the last bits of actual digging and archaeology that we can do before we backfill the site. The site will be backfilled this afternoon and this evening to leave it hopefully as pristine as we found it. We've got, again, two wonderful community volunteers digging with us today. We've got Gary and we've got Jackie.
Give us a wave, Gary. Jackie. Thank you.
So after we spoke to you at 3 p.m. yesterday, we've had a couple of quite significant developments. We've identified, as we spoke about yesterday, this large burnt deposit across the entirety of the site. We were trying to work out the sequence of that, how that related to the Roundhouse. You can see it in front of you here, this large, I mean, it's quite heavily disturbed by root action, but it seems to be an in situ burning layer. Gary's been helping us out by working out what the interface that is between the burning and the wall, and the burning comes later than the wall, but probably not very much later.
Okay.
It's sitting over the collapse of the wall, so I think it's probably we'll take some samples back into the lab and look at them under the microscope.
When you say wall, this is the tumble from the exterior wall of the Roundhouse.
Yes, so Gary is kneeling right in front of the exterior of that wall. It looks like actually those three stones in front of Gary are a reasonable wall face. I'm a bit more confident with that than we've been previously. So that looks like the external wall face that Gary's kneeling right in front of. And then we've got tumble, essentially the wall collapse, coming in down here, and that's blanketed by this dark deposit.
Great.
So Gary's nicely worked out the sequence for us there. This may be a destruction horizon. So essentially the wall caves in and at the same time the roof comes down, and then it all gets choked up with organic matter over time. Below that, where Gary's feet are, we came onto essentially an ancient ground surface, what we'd call a paleosol. So that was sitting on top of that big stone that Gary's sort of fantastic, Gary, that's wonderful. So in there, and that just sits in front of the wall, that's that bright orange material. We've removed that down to the natural, which is a glacial till. So we found the soil that the Roundhouse sat itself on, and we've taken some samples from that we'll be able to take away to the lab and have a look at, characterise that ground surface. Did it have grass on it? What was the nature of the activity on that before the Roundhouse went down? And interestingly, below the collapse of the wall on the outside and above that ancient ground surface, we found a couple of intact turfs. So we believe
I think we saw those yesterday.
Did you see those yesterday?
3 o'clock,
Fantastic,
perhaps.
fantastic. Yeah. So we've now lifted them out, and we'll again get them back to the lab and get them under the microscope. And
so they're intact,
They're intact. We've taken them out. We've sampled them away, and we spoke with I spoke with Dr. Tanya Romankiewicz of the University of Edinburgh, who's a turf specialist this morning, and she gave us some advice on how to lift them and how to get them sorted.
Great.
So if we come over behind you here, Karen. Again, this is our
chairman and his wife. Give us a wave.
As you can see, we're very busy on site today.
Yeah, lots of spectators, huh?
It's fantastic. So I'm going to step through the trench and come just this way, if that's okay. In front of us here, again, we've got that burnt deposit. We've got that burnt deposit coming through to where Jackie is. And if Jackie just lifts her bucket, that's fantastic, because we've got a clay floor surface which runs just to below the wall. So we've got the wall, the interior of the wall in our Roundhouse in front of us, just in front of Jackie, these two massive stones. Yeah. And we've got a clay floor that abuts them. Jackie's now removing that, so hopefully we can get a sample into that clay floor and work out what's under it. I've not seen that yet, there seems to be a dark deposit under the clay floor. So we'll have to have a think about what that is. And then You can see it there. And then in the exterior of the roundhouse, so moving through the roundhouse wall, we've taken away the packing of the wall. We've left these two slabs in because we don't have the capacity to move them. But we've come through the exterior of the wall, and Katie has dropped a section through what we initially thought were two post holes cut into the ground outside the roundhouse. We now think is an erosion feature, essentially a drip line. So if you can imagine, this is the roundhouse wall and it's made of stone. Am I going to come over here actually? So you can see that point.
I'm just going to stay close to you so we can hear you.
So if you can actually, I'll point with this big stick.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, the roundhouse wall is built of stone up to about hip height, and then we know from where Gary's digging it's got a turf upper portion. The roof timbers are supported by an internal set of timbers, and it's got a thatched roof, so water drips down, and as it drips, and it pools outside the roundhouse wall and causes what we know as a drip line. Essentially, it's a saturated area just outside, below the eaves. You can see this dark kind of dished deposit in there, which is then churned up as people and animals walk around and trample it. So it's essentially that hyper-saturated area just outside below the eaves of the roundhouse, and as animals and people circumvent the roundhouse and walk around it, they churn up that ground. We'll get a sample out of there just to clarify and make sure that that is the right thing. And then below, Katie's dropped through that, and we're into essentially the natural, we're into glacial till again. So we've kind of reached the bottom of the archaeology in relation to both walls. We know where it all sits, it all lines up, it all makes sense externally, and if we can finally get a quick look at what Jackie's done after we've done the video, we should hopefully get everything married up internally and it will all make sense. One of the most important things is that we have now, from several secure contexts, we've got the material that will hopefully be valid for radiocarbon dating.
Fantastic.
We'll have to get that. We'll have to get the species of those individual bits of charcoal identified so that we know what species of tree that we're dating. But that's the real big takeaway from this, is that we should be able, with a degree of confidence, to date this roundhouse.
So yesterday you were talking about it potentially being a two-phase site, but you've changed your mind on that today.
I'm undecided on that now. The post holes, when we thought they were post holes, they're clearly not post holes now that we've dug them. We thought that represented an earlier timber phase to the roundhouse and then a later stone phase. However, there still may be some phasing within the roundhouse, because the clay floor that Jackie's dug goes underneath the stone wall.
Yes.
So it continues under the stone wall, and we found it under the base of the stone wall. So it may be a floor to an earlier structure that was then dismantled and had the stone footing of the roundhouse built upon it. That may be an immediate sort of precursor to the roundhouse, or it may be something quite considerably older. And hopefully, by getting a date from that nice dark deposit that Jackie's just come out with, we can work out how that relates. Are they in very close succession to each other, or is there a large time depth?
Has it been hard work digging that all out, Jackie?
A bit hard on the knees. Apart from that, it's actually pretty good fun.
Good job. So Tom, I think you mentioned yesterday afternoon that you had found a few stone tools from the site.
We've got a huge number of pot boilers out of the site, and those are very similar to the pot boilers that I think that Jeremy showed later on. Actually, I'll take you over to them and we'll
okay,
have a
great.
look at them.
Try not to fall in the trench.
So, pot boilers essentially are kind of ubiquitous across a lot of Iron Age roundhouse sites. They're essentially beach pebbles. These are stones that have been sourced to be used in kind of household cooking and the heating of water. So prior to you having your electric kettle or even a pot that could hold water over a flame, people used beach pebbles that they would heat up in a fire and then drop into a pit or a trough of water. The thermal shock, you can see the roundness of the beach pebble on the outside, and the thermal shock of the hot stone being dropped into the cold water can cause them to fracture, and you get these characteristic right angle fractures where it deviates from the curve of the beach pebble and it maintains a right angle across. So we've got a fair number of these. Again, you can see the rounded of the beach pebble on the end, and then the angular thermal fracture. We've got loads of these principally from that burnt deposit and within the tumble of the wall, but kind of all over the site. What we'll have to do is get those cleaned up and have a lithics, like a stone tools specialist, have a look at them, because some of them may have rubbing marks or wear marks, because quite often people use pebbles as stone tools for processing hides or processing agricultural produce, and then when they've stopped using the stone for that, they chuck it in the fire and use it as a pot boiler.
So the lithic specialist will be able to tell us if it's had a previous use?
They will indeed. They'll probably come back and tell me that these are all pot boilers and to stop wasting their time, but we live in hope that we've got some rubbing
You know
stones.
what, you've been pessimistic all week, and then you did admit yesterday that you actually find a lot more of interest than you expected, so you never know, there might be a gem in one of those bags.
That's very true. Maybe that's just my nature to downplay findings. I think I'm naturally pessimistic, but that's not quite true anyway. Yeah, but that's where we're up to. It's been a fantastic excavation. As I said, the Roundhouse is in incredible condition for compared to what we expected from it, and it's been fantastic having. We've had 6 community volunteers excavating with us. Sadly, not all at the same time due to household restrictions and social distancing restrictions. And we've had, I think, around about 100 visitors up to the site over the 3 days, which has been great fun as well. So. And it seems to have sparked quite a lot of interest and kind of got people's minds going about the heritage of the local area. So
we've had a lot of interest on Facebook as well.
I'm very glad to hear it. And it may be that once we've written our report and got that all out, we can think about coming back, because the excavation, to be honest, has asked a lot more questions than it's answered, as is the way with archaeology.
Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic.
Well, I would just like to say thank you to our 2 volunteers today, Gary and Jackie, who have joined us. Also to Katie, over in the distance there. She's a bit camera shy, but she's done an amazing job. And after lunch, the real fun will start, which is backfilling the site. So we're going to have to put our backs into it after lunch. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Facebook. And keep an eye on our website, on our Facebook page, for any updates on our activity here. Thank you.